Hi, everyone. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who are joining in from different corners of the world. I'm Rotasho Agarwal, partner with Everest Group, lead our GBS practice, and welcome to the episode 9 of our Conversation with Leaders series, where we bring in GBS leaders and talk about some very interesting and prevalent topics. And I am excited to be joined today by Mahua Sengupta, who's representing a tremendous experience from the industry, currently working with Novartis. Mohua, welcome. Thanks for joining me. And please help our listeners understand a little bit about your background, your role.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you so much. Thanks for the invite and thanks for the warm welcome. So, I am Mohua. I now lead the Novartis Corporate Center, Hyderabad. But I'm just about 2.5 weeks in the company. So, I will talk about my own GCC experience. So, whatever I'm going to say now is going to be based on my past experience and based on my overall GCC knowledge and experience. So it doesn't mean represent anything that Novartis does. So it's my point of view. So I have been mostly in the IT services industry for bigger chunk of my life. And for the last few years, I was heading Mashreq banks globally, Mashreq banks GCCs, and now I head the India one, which is Novartis Hyderabad Corporate Center, as we call it. So that's in brief my introduction for 30 years or of 30 years.
Great, great. Really looking forward to unpacking a lot of wisdom you have gathered, Mohua.
Thank,
Uh,
thank you.
a couple of call outs for our viewers today is we use the term GBS, Global Business Services, as an overarching term for the entire delivery model, the services delivery model. That said, the other term that you heard Mohua speaking about, GCC, which is a Global Capability Center, refers to a particular site or center as part of that broader delivery model. We may end up using a couple of these terms interchangeably,
Not
but
necessarily.
essentially, we are talking about how does somebody within the broader construct of GBS manage multiple centers, multiple sites, kind of creating more value out of this. I'm joining in from my home office in London. And Mohua, I think you are in Hyderabad at your hotel
Hyderabad, that's
today.
correct. Yes, yes, I am.
Great, great, thanks. And we would love to know where are our listeners joining in from today. So do keep do share your location in the chat and do keep posting your questions as we go along. Let me start, Mohua. I know you said you will not represent Novartis, and we
No,
respect
I
that.
won't. No, not represent, but what I say, it's too soon to say that
It's too
what I'm
soon.
saying is
Exactly.
Novartis's point of view. I do
Exactly.
represent Novartis and very proudly.
No, absolutely. Great, great clarification. So help us understand a little bit about uh, what does Novartis GBS GCC model look like, and then a little bit about your previous organization. Is that what was this network like? What kind of services? What kind of locations? So that our listeners can put the conversation that follows into context of the scale and spirit of these organizations.
Sure. So I'll start with Novartis. Novartis, I am looking after Hyderabad. It is the only center in Hyderabad. We have two centers, but
Mhm.
these are the Hyderabad is the only city where Novartis has a center in India, or rather a corporate center in India, which is GBS or GCC, whatever we want to call it. Uh, and there are five other centers across the globe in five
Mhm.
different other countries, and I look after just the Hyderabad one. Now, in my past life, I was the global head of GCCs for Mashreq Global Network or Mashreq Bank, which is a GCC or Dubai-based bank. In that case, it's GCC means Gulf countries, so the
Yeah.
Dubai-based bank. And
Mhm.
I had run GCCs across India, Pakistan, and Egypt, of which Pakistan and Egypt was started by me.
Mhm.
India Center had existed, and we have just grown. I had just grown it from there and moved in different, went through many, many, many paradigm shifts there. So that's pretty much it. as far as my GCC experience goes, or GBS experience goes. Prior to that, I have been very closely connected to it because of my IT services background. I Danske IT, for example, which became a GCC,
Mm-hmm.
first incubated by ITC Infotech, and it was part of my organization. And
Sure.
we incubated it from zero to almost 850 people, and then we handed it over for them to take it on forward as a GCC. So yes, my connect with GCCs goes back a long time.
Brilliant. And I can see people dialing in from different parts of India. Of course, we have people from United States and then South Asia as well. So good to have everybody dialing in. Let me start by asking you this, Mohua. Then, as you have built the GCC networks through your career, how do companies think about uh, mature companies, in terms of thinking about developing these portfolios? When do we need more sites? What kind of sites do we need? And how do we, how do you think about what value proposition a particular site will have, the role in the model? So as you think about expanding a GBS or GCC footprint, the model, how do you think about need and role of different locations?
See, typically, I have to proudly say that most companies, when they think about GCCs, they think about India. That's kind of the first choice. And that's because we had the first movers advantage. It started somewhere in the early 2000, or even maybe
Mhm.
some of them even before that. And we have had the full length of 25 years of almost 24, 25 years of running. Huh? So India becomes a first option typically. I mean, I'm yet to see, there are a few, but mostly it's India. Now, when it comes to choosing the second one or the third one, it depends on the drive behind that, depends on individual company strategy. So I can talk about a few of them which I have
Mhm.
experienced either myself or through colleagues in other companies. So for example, there could be one where, say, in case of Mashrek, I had to grow Egypt, for example, for Arabic skill, because that's what we needed. And India, it's very hard to find. We did try, but we didn't get it.
Yep.
Same goes with Pakistan. It's very hard to find Arabic skill. And then there are certain, the proximity to the parent country is also an advantage.
Mhm.
Time zone. Many a times India is not in the same time zone. So you need some support from the same time zone. So that could be another area. It can happen if it is within India. A second center could be either from, say, a particular city has more skill set. Say, for example, pharma has primarily the skill sets are sitting in Hyderabad. So, unlike IT, which is probably mostly in Bangalore, or
Mhm.
Bangalore is a front runner. So, choosing a second city within India could be based on skill availability, could be based on city. Let me depend on two. One can be another's BCP. Third thing is, see, this whole COVID has exposed us to the challenge of depending on one country.
Mhm.
Certain
True.
countries became completely out of commission for many, many months. So if most companies realize that they need to have backup in other countries. That is the third thing. Fourthly, sometimes this follow the sun. So time zone is one, but follow the sun. So to keep a continuous 24-hour cycle, countries are typically many a times
Mhm.
GCC sites are chosen accordingly. So what I mean to say is the actual true reason, or the primary driver depends on the individual company strategy. I have seen companies who depend on only one GCC, one center. But I have also seen companies with six, seven centers. I've seen
Yep.
three. So the thing is, it depends on the priority, and it also depends on the size. See, if you're a smaller company, it doesn't make sense to have multiple sites at the same time
True.
because you get the
Suboptimal.
benefit of scale.
Yep.
So it varies from company to company, but more and more we are seeing a multi GCC approach.
Got it. Interestingly, in your articulation of various drivers, cost did not feature. I'm sure it is important, but it did not make to the list. Is that is that a conscious choice because you see cost not really topping the priority list and talent being the primary driver going forward or even now?
No, cost is by default there. So
Hmm.
you don't need to mention cost because it has to be there. Because see, the thing is, cost arbitrage was the first driver, and
Yep.
while we have evolved, and the whole GCC story in India, at least, we have seen because of this life cycle of or the runway of 25 years, we have seen it has really grown and grown through the life cycle. So it started off, I mean, if I use NASCOM terminologies, which is pretty industry standard, it started off as outposts, became satellites, then became centers, and now transformation centers. And now it is we are riding the wave 4.0, which
Hmm.
is when we are innovating, we are
Yep.
transforming. It's becoming a true partner to uh, the parent. Now, so if I talk about all of this, we cannot, while these all these changes have happened, we cannot lose sight of the cost. So that is by default given. And what
I
we have
would put.
seen,
Mhm. Good. Good.
is that while it is by default, many other priorities have come. So, for example, today only we were having a discussion that cost arbitrage is not the only thing. Talent arbitrage. Now, India has become a pool of talent, digital talent especially. You get the top, best skilled people in India. So, it's a talent arbitrage. So many other drivers have come, but no, we cannot lose sight of the cost because even forget about GCCs. Everybody is now under tremendous cost pressure. Talk about any company, show me one company which doesn't have cost pressure. So cost is
I
there
love
by
that.
default.
I love that. And I'd put quotes around it that we cannot lose sight of cost because you are right. While the focus has shifted to talent arbitrage and all the other value added benefits that the model provides, and you go where you can maximize the leverage, you
Yeah,
still need to remain cost competitive. So that's a baseline expectation. Uh,
yeah,
Another thing you said was around thinking about having a network that can support around the sun, all kind of time zones. So let me ask you this: as you as the network expands, and in one of your previous organizations, you were responsible for expanding the network, and now you are part of a fairly large global network of sites. How does one make sure that the overall role, the plan for these multiple sites is integrated, that they're not just doing a thing of their own? There is a central strategy, there is a vision, and the work placement, the evolution, the growth is a coordinated, plan. How does one go about that?
see, it is extremely important. I mean, what you have brought up, what you've asked, it's extremely important. And I think, again, there have been many companies who are early starters who started really early, have gone through a learning cycle also. It probably started off as not so integrated. If you think about 25 years back, it was probably
Hmm.
20 years back, it was probably not so integrated, and companies have paid for it because what had happened is one site is pitted against the other. There's a not so healthy competition. It ended up becoming an
Hmm.
internal competition, which is unhealthy. What has happened or what has evolved is this need for an integrated strategy, and there are many levels to that. One, common leadership at the top. So for example, as I said, I was the global head, and while I was looking after India in particular, I was very closely connected to Pakistan and Egypt also. There was a regular conversation. When I say regular, it's multiple times in a day. We were always on the same page.
Hmm.
And I see the same in Novartis, right? There is one single leader who heads all the six NOCCs, and I'm pretty sure that all the leaders of the different sites, I mean, I have already been greeted and welcomed by my colleagues in the other sites, and I'm looking forward to working with them closely. But I think that is an extremely important thing. It is also
Hmm.
extremely important for the absolute top leadership, the executive committee, and everybody to make sure that this is not a competition. This is this is a collaboration. It could be a competition because some amount of healthy competition is good, but it
Exactly.
has to be competition because we work together, we grow together, and we win together. So it is extremely important. And having a common leadership, driving a common strategy, making each of these centers a part of the overall organization, driving the strategy from the top together. And only when do you become competitive, when do you become when you fight amongst, when is there in fight? It's typically when people feel threatened. And when do people feel threatened? When they don't know what's happening. So if this is the overarching theme, that we are in it, all of us are in it together, then as long as the leadership kind of drives that all the centers, two, three, five, six, we are all going to win together. And if there is a healthy competition, that's fine. But I think that's the model. That's what, and it has to be reiterated. It's not a one-time thing that yeah, we are all in it together. It has to be reiterated, and that's why that direct leadership of all the centers to one person, that is also, I think, that is an extremely important thing. And more we are seeing this, that one of the, and typically it is I mean, people have figured it out. I don't think
Yeah.
we have that problem of unintegrated or disintegrated GCCs anymore.
Yeah. Personally, we hear a fair bit of uh, confusion and acknowledgement of room of improvement there. So I believe a lot of our listeners today will learn from that. In fact, a few keywords that you mentioned, right? You spoke about clarity, you spoke about need for transparency, you spoke about common strategy or common agenda, but also the top-down mandate in a way to provide that clarity or to build healthy competition. In that
Right.
process, have you felt the need to have documented guidebooks or strategy, that what is our work placement, approach, what is our decision tree look like, what is the sign on the door of each of these sites, and so on? Does that, to what extent is that essential versus optional, Moa? Because that's a very common question, and still we track about 8,000 plus companies that operate in this model. And for whatever reasons, despite making huge progress, a large part of them still do not have that centralized views. So
Yeah.
how do you see that requirement?
So yes and no, because I always feel that documentation is overrated. While it's very needed, but
Mhm.
it's all in the intent. You can have a document. If I want to interpret it in a different way, I will interpret it in a different way. So it is more in the, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it is more in the culture of the company, and I feel the culture is beyond documentation. Yes, documentation is nice to have if there is a true confusion, in the sense that if it's really a confusion and not an intent to grab each other's ground, then I understand that if it's a true confusion, some documentation might help and give some guidance. But it's probably, if it's 10% documentation, it's 90% culture. So I would, if I were you, I mean, I would, if I were the leader, I would focus more on that culture. For example, where I ran the three GCCs, I didn't have a we didn't draft any kind of documentation. Maybe it's too soon, or it will happen at some point. But that was never my focus. The focus was to bring everybody together, to have celebrations together, to win together. If one GCC had achieved something, we would celebrate amongst all three, maybe
Mhm.
virtually. So it is more the culture. um, and it is not I mean, yes, document, as I
Yeah.
said, I mean, as you said, I
Fair
mean, when
point.
it grows big, documentation will probably help. And I'm not against it. But however much you document, if the culture is not set right.
So documentation helps, but documentation alone won't solve for it. You really need people to have the right intent and operate as one. In fact, let's take a
Huh.
couple of questions, right? So two questions I'll call out. So there is a question around the GCC 4.0 model. What I would like to tell the person who asked the question and our other listeners is that we are offering a thought leadership around evolution of GBS model. So you will all find a link, and you can comment in the chat to request for a copy. Given the paucity of time, we may not have time to delve deeper into the model, but your lifetime of experience in the industry, Mahua, my extensive focus area on this, we are happy to talk about this. So happy to take that conversation forward at a later
Sure.
time. But everybody can request for a copy of that thought leadership piece in chat. Another
Absolutely.
question connecting to that is, as you think about alignment across the centers, what are some of learnings from your experience, Mahua, where the centers coexist and collaborate with the vendor partners or the third party services providers or outsourcing providers, different terminologies, who are also working with the same buyer segment or business and providing services. So while we are talking about what is in house in these centers, there is that outsourced component also. Uh, from your experience, what have you seen the role of GCCs, and how does that work together to create greater impact for the company?
Okay, so I'll take the 4.0 question first.
Mhm.
Uh, so GCC 4.0, as we are calling it out, is, or as NASCOM and Zinov has worked on it. The key features, I mean, there are 7, 8 features that have been outlined. The main things that I think really differentiates this time for GCCs is, number one, it is actually truly has become a sandbox for growing global leaders.
Mhm.
There are so many GCCs. I mean, there were before also, there were global leaders based out of GCCs, but they were a few and far between. You had to
True.
look for them. Now, every GCC has global leaders, some more, some less, some even have executive committee people sitting out of GCCs. So it has completely changed its leadership game out of GCCs. That's one. Secondly, and also equally important, is the kind of talent that we are seeing. And again, it's being called India's new talent code.
Mhm.
Now, what is it? See, as I said at the beginning, GCC as an industry has, in India, has gotten that 25-year runway.
Yep.
And as a result, we have Gen X, Y, Z workforce sitting together, working together. Because if you had looked at it 10 years back, you would not have that level of experience. So today we can have absolute leadership of GCCs with long standing GCC experience, strong GCC experience. And then we have the real youngsters coming up with all kinds of emerging skills to complement them. So we have gone through that full cycle. And from here on, that will continue. But this is a very new thing. Even 5 years back, that was not there. So they were mostly, it ended up to middle managers, and then the absolute leadership came from either from that particular industry or from ITES industry. So we couldn't claim that there were so many leaders who have lived their full life cycle in GCC. So that's
Yep.
the other thing, which I think is extremely important, and we will benefit out of this from here on. The third thing is, see, this whole push on sustainability, which I think that awareness came to India in the recent years, right? Now, this whole delivery and sustainable delivery and sustainability has come together, and we all
Mhm.
talk about sustainable delivery. The kind of focus we see on environment from the corporate side, kind of focus we see on giving back to the society, the kind of focus we see on diversity at workplaces, it is phenomenal, and we hadn't seen this. I mean, if even if I look back 10 years back, it was not there. So we have really, really, really evolved in this area. And all these three themes are going to really propel that next growth, I mean, next
Yep.
level for the GCCs. So it is a true, while we have gone through many paradigm shifts, as we keep claiming, this is of a different genre altogether. So we will now,
Yeah.
4.0 will really propel the growth of GCCs, and we'll see a lot. We can't even imagine what this GCC will become in the next 5 years. So
It's
I'm
really
very, very,
promising. You're right. It's really promising. GCCs or the broader GBS model is right
yeah.
at the middle of it. There is a huge expectation. There is a huge opportunity. Absolutely looking forward to it. In fact, question to our listeners is kind of a request for questions is, as you see this, what are the opportunities you see for your GCCs going forward, or if there are any learnings that you have had from managing your respective networks. Do share that with our other listeners as well in the chat. Moving on to our other question, Mohua, have
Yes,
you?
can you just
Yeah,
repeat the jig my
I'll, I'll,
memory a
I'll,
little
I'll do that.
bit?
Yeah. So
It was
this
a
is
long
about
question.
it was, yeah. But let me ask you the gist of it is, what are the learnings in terms of GCCs coexisting with vendor
Yeah,
partners,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then how
yeah.
do they collaborate and create greater value for the company?
So, see what I have seen again, this is based on my experience. Um, Again, no, ideally, if the head office or headquarters is not making one, pitting one against the other. So, GCCs having to compete with vendors is not healthy. Because then what is happening, the GCC is not feeling that I am a part of the parent organization. Then you're being treated as an outpost.
Hmm.
And I think gone are those days. Today, what most companies are doing is yes, there will be skills which we don't want to build internally. We want to outsource to vendors. But typically, what most companies are doing is, for example, if it is a vendor in India, the management of that or giving up that job, passing on that job, that is being managed by the India GCC. So it is a partnership that is happening with the in country, or even if it is from there is enough, even if it has impact or influence from global or anywhere else. It is not that okay, you can't do it, you couldn't do it, and that's why I'm giving it to the vendor. So what will happen is the GCC will feel threatened. They will try to build skills which it's not their core skill, and there is no.
Hmm.
So the point is, if the GCC is considered as a part of the parent organization, then they're part of the strategy that, okay, these are the things that we will build in house, whether at the headquarters or in any of the GCCs, or these are the skills that we are going to outsource. So, again, and the minute that happens, there is healthy relationship everywhere between the
But
GCC and the parent company and
but
also with the.
are they really, Mohua? In many organizations, we see some of the GCC leaders unfortunately lacking that visibility or lacking that seat at the table. So perhaps uh, if you can share some of your learnings of how can GCC leaders, what can they do to increase the chances of them being plugged into this greater strategy so that they are not threatened but part of it, and then are part of the decision making versus on the receiving end of this, because we see realistically many of them still kept out of those conversations.
So, see, if you're talking about the absolute CEO's table, um, it is true that the GCC leaders are still not there because mostly GCC leaders are CEO minus two, minus three.
Mhm.
So, but having said that, it is up to the GCC leaders. Yes, absolutely, the culture of the company has to be positive. There has to be psychological safety and all of that. But there was a time, since given the so many years behind me, there was a time when GCC leaders were playing a passive role,
Mhm.
very passive role. Whatever was being given, sent, that was being delivered, delivering it immaculately was the main focus. So there was never an attempt to be a part of that strategy, that, okay, I'm your partner in this strategy. And that is a challenge. Now then, but I see that most of the GCC leaders, or most of us have evolved. And now everybody wants to be, even if you're not at the CEO's table, your boss is, or
Yep.
his bosses. So there is no reason to feel left out, because not everybody is a CXO. Doesn't mean that they will not have a role in the strategy, right? As I said, of course, the company culture is important. There could be a company where it will not be seen positively.
Mhm.
People will not open up. But I think most companies, or a lot of them, who are open to having GCCs, typically today they are open to sharing strategies. So sharing strategy is very important. But it is, I would, the reason I hate to use the word sharing strategy is it kind of says that it flows from the top. So I'm just saying that the GCC leaders also have a role to be proactive and pull some of these, be a party to it. And okay, if this is the strategy, can I do this? So basically, not ask, but tell that what they can do.
And we have seen many examples of GCC leaders building that credibility in individual capacity and in organizational capacity to have that seat at the table or a voice directly to somebody who is having that seat at the table. So I agree with that. In fact, the way we have sometimes described is that, are you a helper, shaper, or leader? And what we're saying is that you don't need to be the same character in every decision. So there are some
Exactly.
where you will help, there are some
Yeah.
where you will co collaborate and shape, and there are some where you can actually lead because what you said earlier, right? In the last 3 decades, as the model has matured, today, a lot of transformation challenges, business challenges, are requiring organizational to build muscles that don't exist. It is not lift
That's
and shift anymore in all areas. So, how can GCCs do that together, right? Let me ask you another question that stemmed from your previous comment is as you think about not sharing of strategy from business to GCC, but kind of a collaboration, how do you, when you manage these multiple centers in your previous org also, and now you're part of a big organization, though a small duration, but from your experience, how does one balance the contradictions in the, in a way, demand and the supply side, when if every business gets their say, it can lead to a very haphazard strategy. If every sometimes on the supply side everybody can want more in their area or less of some things in their area, so how does one manage when there is a contradiction and bring it back to more objective decision making, what is in the greater interest of the company?
See, when you have ambitious, hungry people, smart people, you will always have contradictions.
Yeah.
Not just in corporate, in whichever at home, at within friends. So contradictions or I mean conflicting ideas actually says that it's a healthy organization with smart people.
Mhm.
So yes, it will not automatically balance out, but that's why the importance of an integrated strategy. And I think we all have, as leaders, as we grow, we all have learned that you will win some, you lose some. But as long as we are all winning it, the outcome is we are winning it together. You might have lost a battle, but you won the war together. So I think that should be the mindset, and it is nothing new in GCC. See, this is what you're talking about. It is basically from getting the work package from
Mhm.
headquarters. But if you look at an organization which is based in one country, it's not a GCC situation. There also a plum project comes up. I want it, you want it.
Mhm.
Where does it go? So it is, and sometimes it is not individual, sometimes it is groups that, okay, this can fall under this area or it can come
Yeah.
to this. Who will lead it and who will support? Because nothing is so clear cut that it is belongs to this one group only. So people have to learn work together. And I think most of us are matured enough. And the fact that if you see that everything is falling in place and balancing out, that means people are not ambitious. So I would be more worried about that. If there are people who can say that, okay, I want it, and the same thing someone else says, I want it, and third person says, I want it, that's a healthy space to be in. Yes, there will be some conflict, but I mean, any healthy place will have some amount of
Yeah.
conflict.
No, you remind me of something. A few years ago at a conference somewhere, I read the opening remarks that GBS is the death of ambition, and that was a very provocative opening. But essentially, it was all about that the GBS or the GCC, the centers, the leadership role is very much dependent on how leaders shape it. So what you are saying is that what prevents you from raising something, asking something, sharing something, and then of course it has to be received. It's a joint effort, but there is an opportunity,
Yeah.
especially for centers as they are maturing, because what you said in your opening remarks, right? Cost is important. in our annual key issues study, cost topped the list of what is most concerning for business leaders, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of that cost pressure, while it may lead to different decisions in different parts of business for GBS or GCC model, it means more work, more opportunity, more
Exactly.
opportunity to deliver additional savings, faster transformation. So a lot of
Yes.
that, right? I see a lot of questions pouring in, Moa. I'll just
Mm.
remind our listeners that they can request for some of the thought leadership pieces that I mentioned earlier by using the link or requesting in the chat. What I'll also do is I'll ask another question, Moa. Uh, we when we talked about cost, there is also this question that is the conversation moving forward from there on in terms of additional pressure and with generative AI coming in, is there a pressure from business on GCC leaders? And it's phrased that show me the value. So is there a pressure to deliver accelerated savings? And we see a lot of technology companies pitching aggressive plans on integration of Gen AI and what it could lead to. What do you see as a GCC leader, the implications of that or the pressure that may create?
See, Gen AI will change the way every business works. Huh? It's just, it has potentially, it will. Huh?
Yeah.
Now, yes, it has challenges also that come with it, but that has to be managed through regulations because there are many things that are, I mean, if you talk about somebody from your colleagues from fraud prevention and area, you will see how their alerts have suddenly gone up substantially because of Gen AI, because it has, I mean, substantial capability. But it will transform how the GCCs or why GCCs, how everybody, every business works. So I don't see it as a separate pressure on GCCs, but I do see it as an enabler for this wave 4.0, as I was talking about for GCCs,
Hmm.
because what it will do is it will bring this multi generational workforce along with generative AI. It will really transform the whole productivity game that we have been talking about. And yes, we have achieved a lot, but this time, again, thanks to Gen AI, it will be a complete paradigm shift of productivity. So whether it's GCC or it's any business, any organization, any operations, we will have that pressure. And we will, I think, I don't even see it as a pressure. I think it's an opportunity, and everybody's really geared to ride that wave. So
Yeah.
yes, lots of more work will happen. A lot
And
of
then
more
very
work.
fluid, right? The situation. For example, last year around third end of third quarter, around September October, we did a survey of our GBS network, and what came out is that 90%, and I'm quoting from memory, so ballpark numbers, but 90% believe generative AI will have significant impact, is important. Less than 50% were actually doing something about it, and less than 10% were in a production stage on anything at all. We are keen to see how does that move fast forward. We have another survey on the topic planned in Q2, but generally we have seen one thing, which is a learning for GCC leaders, is that the technology company, the services providers, they are investing much more and exploring and experimenting at a much different scale. So it is not only about doing everything yourself within the GCC, but making it happen for GCC and for the company through GCC. You may actually use external help. That's again,
Yeah,
without going too deep into that topic, that's an important call out, because we have seen
yeah,
many companies try to do experiment, suffer from limitations and fail, or kind of stagger. So that has been that learning as well.
yeah. It's about, see, again, it's about if a company decides that okay, Gen AI capability I will build myself and I will not rely on a partner or a vendor, then it is their strategy. And then invest in it and do the go the whole 9 yard. If it
Yep.
is not, then yes, absolutely, partner with a vendor. But one point I'll say, you said that IT companies or IT services companies are investing more. Yes, maybe they are. But as we are seeing the recent reports, GCCs have really gone ahead in building tech skills or hiring more or better people. The hiring rate has gone up much more in GCCs compared to IT services. So, for the first time
Yeah.
this year, GCCs have taken a lead. So, very proud of that.
No,
But
absolutely.
absolutely,
Yeah. And the scale, realistically is very different, but you are right. What I would say is that for the first time we are seeing actually top IT services providers face that pressure and kind of not grow or shrink sometimes. You're right. GCCs continue to grow, but what you said earlier, it's a matter of a balance. Which model is better for what? So
yeah.
spot on there. um, Lil- uh, and next question is, Moa, when you are running multiple sites, how important is it to meet different leaders, be present in different locations? And we know COVID changed the way we operate and the way we think about it. But how much of this is actually you spoke a lot about culture, intent, one team spirit. How much of that comes from actually spending time with each other versus do you think can be accomplished in the way we are working? I work from my home office for a good part of the week. So how much of that works versus you really need to meet people, spend some time aligned?
I see. I mean, I strongly believe that meeting people is very very important. No doubt about that. Extremely important because the connect you make when you meet someone personally, or you share that cup of coffee together, is very different.
Hmm.
But having said that, is it absolutely an emergency? Probably not. COVID has taught us that, and I will
Yeah.
talk from my personal experience being an Indian, or rather not being an Indian, I'm a Canadian, but living in India, a resident of India. I ran a center in Pakistan. It cannot be as far away from chalk and cheese. I mean, this is like absolute chalk and cheese. It's can. I mean, if India can run a business, somebody from India can run something in Pakistan. Uh, Anything is possible, and I have never traveled to Pakistan, nor have I ever invited my Pakistan country head to come visit India because of various reasons. But
Hmm.
did we not meet? Yes, we met. Used to travel to Dubai, typically once a quarter, and meet. But that's the center head only, the country head only. I haven't met the rest of the team, or most of them. But I think I had developed a very nice healthy working relationship with a big chunk of people. And when I left the company, I was equally, I mean, moved by how people from my Pakistan center did a farewell, though virtual,
Hmm.
and it was
Wow.
absolutely touching. So the relationship that can be built virtually is unbelievable, and I would not have believed it unless I had that experience. So if India Pakistan can make it work, anybody in the world can make it work with or without.
True. And the way you earlier mentioned how there's a multi-generational workforce, and a colleague of mine shared a very interesting conversation with her kid. I'll share that in short. And the mindset that reflected on the not being limited by physical interaction to work together. So she said that the kid was watching somebody play video games, and she said that at least play the game yourself. And the kid's response was that you never go out to play baseball, but you always watch baseball. So, and that led to an interaction, right? And at least when she told me, I had never thought about it like that. I always thought watching cricket is fine, but watching somebody play, a Nerf gun video game is not like that's odd. But anyhow, that's kind of me. My nephews think differently. Coming to the main point is the way a lot of communities are originated, scaled, and continue on social media these days.
Yeah.
The workforce now is not restricted and they don't feel the gaps. In fact, they're very open, they're very comfortable, and they're building those bonds through digital mode as well. So what you said earlier, that it is always good if that is something that helps, but don't let that become a handicap. That
Not
is
an
pretty
impediment, no. Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
important, right? Uh, so Moa, great. I recognize time is passing quickly. Last couple of questions for you. One question will be that how does a company, and again, maybe I'm asking the obvious, but I still want you to lay it out, is how does a company benefit when the network operates as one versus dealing with multiple centers independently? What is in it for the business, and what do you expect from business leaders to contribute to this approach of operating as one?
So yeah, I mean, it's not even a comparison. I mean, it's only when a company and the network work as one that the company gets the benefit out of it. Yeah, you
Mhm.
might get some cost arbitrage otherwise, but it's not going to be a long-term, continuous way, a flow of benefit that you get. So that goes without saying. Now, what is required for this the integrated model to be successful is one, as we rightly said, it's integrated. Sharing the strategy, one strategy for overall, one. See, the employees should be treated equally. It cannot be that okay in head office the employees are treated in a certain
Mhm.
way in centers. So most companies have realized that. Today we have EVPs, which are very common across the globe. Second thing is empowerment and leadership roles. See, one challenge that GCCs are facing is that the pyramid is very much like this. So
Mhm.
there are fewer senior roles. There are lots of junior roles. So
Yep.
the growth or the growth ambition of individuals, employees, are getting impacted, and that's when GCCs are losing their people. So that is, and it's not just GCCs, it is true for any organization, but typically because GCCs are directed towards one company, see if it is an IT services company, say most of our, say if I'm talking about IT skills,
Mhm.
when they're moving, if they're in IT services, even if the vertical growth is stunted at some point, there could be horizontal growth. You can move from one client to another. But in case of GCCs, it's that option is not there. You can move from one type of work to another, but it's still very similar. So there is a need to bring more and more leadership roles to the GCCs. And I think that is one area where most companies can do more, still can do more. As we have seen, we see some leadership roles coming, but still very few. So that's one. Secondly, empowering the GCCs. So in the sense that not everything is the decision flows from there. Decisions should be flowing on both sides. Huh?
Yep.
So that is extremely important. And third, I would say that, see, just like we talk about employees going and spending time in the headquarters, we look at it as a kind of a park that, okay, somebody coming from India, kid joining in India, they come to say US or the parent come in headquarters and come and work for 3 months, 6 months, come for the training. It's seen as a good park, and for the youngster they like to do that. But there should be a reverse also, in the
Mhm.
sense that, see, now GCCs are becoming so powerful course for every organization. In order to become a top level leader, there should be a need that you have must have had a stint in the GCCs. So if I'm in to be a part of the executive committee, if you have to have a stint, I'm just taking executive committee as an example. It can be any promotion, any level that we decide that in order to get there, one of the requirement is you do a stint in the GCCs, because then only you are, because otherwise you're leaving out a big part of the organization which you have not experienced yourself.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I see that that flow should be there on both sides. Huh? It can be a 3 month stint, 6 month stint, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, that can evolve. But there is a need in any forum that I go, there is always a conversation that, oh, we should create opportunity for people from the GCCs to travel to the headquarters. Yes, absolutely, very important. but the reverse is important as well, because then only it will become a truly integrated company, and the leaders at the top will have an overarching
Well, that's a great
exposure to.
point. That's a great point because we have seen some of the companies, their GCC network or the entire GBS model is actually representative of a good part of 15, 20, even sometimes 25% of the company's workforce.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the leaders need to be, appreciative, in sync with that part of the organization as well. uh, while you were making your previous comment that a vendor has to go to different clients, but in a GCC that opportunity is less. A very interesting question came in is that if a GBS or GCC has done well for one BU, one unit, one geography, how can they take that success and present it to other geographies? Now, that is something that has been happening for a while, but the question came up, so helpful to hear from your point of view on what are the best practices, because while they are part of the organization, in the spirit of that healthy competition, they still have to go sell the model. So, what are the best practices you have seen, Mohua, to do that?
See, success breeds success. So I'm a true believer of, if you want to do something really different, path breaking, do it in one area as a pilot, and then once you succeed, then everyone else will actually latch on, because everybody wants to be a part of the success. So yes, we do
Mhm.
need to sell, but that selling, the second level of selling, is less selling, more informing. Because what happens in a large organization, even if particular area, if there is a major success in a particular area, the other group might know that there is a success but might not know all the detail. So yes, there is a information sharing that has to happen. The GCC leader or somebody must go and talk to the other groups who have not yet ventured into their GCC journey. But once you have a success story, everybody wants to latch on to it. So I mean, I have had situations where we have driven some policies or processes out of the GCCs, and it has been latched onto by the global organization, who have then taken it on and shared it across, to the extent that everybody started riding that wave. So yes, we do need to do that, but it's always to be
Yeah.
nice to start in one area. There are very few people today who are absolute naysayers with respect to GCCs. I think everybody is seeing the value.
I think that's a shrinking population,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
miniatures, yeah.
Yes.
And especially from our observations, after COVID, the resiliency shown during the
Yes.
talent for, again, the resiliency of the talent model, the ability to retain talent, scale, shift focus from one type of work to other, integrate IT and ops, just few of the many, many reasons. So,
Digitalization. See, COVID has
yeah,
actually pushed the digitalization for every company. People who were sitting back,
exactly.
we also needed it. And where do you do it? I mean, India is sitting on a storehouse of digital talent. I mean, where do you
True.
get better?
Yeah, and then we see about 20% headcount growth in the last 2 years in the in model, 500 plus new setups by existing companies, other companies, and not just India, but good part of Asia Pacific. Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and then Eastern Europe, Latin America. So fairly global model. Would love to continue the conversation over, but we are kind of
Fine.
running out of time. So one final question to you, and I'll encourage our audience, if they have any last questions, do drop them in the chat. But my one final question to you, Mova, is if you were to do this again, what would be some things you wish somebody had told you sooner that you have learned the hard way? So do share some of that with our listeners
You
today.
won't like my answer. I don't learn from, say, somebody telling me something. Never I've done it. So I love to learn with experience. So honestly, my GCC journey so far, even if I go back to the incubation of Danske IT, I mean, it has been a amazing experience. I mean, I have learned. What I've done is I've tried to move away from beaten path,
Mhm,
done so much that was not typically. See, GCCs had a tendency to stay as operations
mhm,
technology contact center, right? You won't believe that I have had experience where we have done all kinds of banking work, all kinds and everything possible,
Yeah, core operations.
sitting in
Yeah.
the GCCs, and every group having substantial population out of the GCCs. So I have typically that has been my style. So I'll be very sorry to say that mm-mm, I have only when you learn it through experience, I think that's the best learning. And yes, some you will win, some you will lose, somewhere you might have, make a mistake. If the organization has provides that psychological safety, which I have always been fortunate with, I think that's the best way of learning. And I would do the same thing. I would make the same mistakes and I would learn the same way, because I'm having a fantastic ride. I'm loving it.
No, wonderful. And every leader has to carve their own way and do what works
Yes.
best. It has been absolutely fantastic talking to you, Mohua. Thank you again for taking
Same.
out time. We know it's late for you. You're doing this from your hotel room, so really appreciate it. One final announcement, a reminder to our listeners. Thank you for staying with us for so long. Do make use of the offer to download the thought leadership. If we have not addressed all your questions, either Mohua or I will try to get back into the chat later. Feel free to message us directly on LinkedIn as well. Uh, Thank you again for joining. Once again, thanks, Mohua. All the best with the new challenges that you are taking on,
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
love the conversation, and look forward to
Same here.
more.
Same here. Absolutely love the conversation. Thanks, Rohit. Thank you. And thanks to
Thank
all the
you.
viewers.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a good day.